Partnered by Times Influence.
India is widely regarded as the coronary artery disease capital of the world, with the highest number of cases occurring in our country, which raises very complex yet critical questions. Them being, how did we get here? And how do we protect ourselves and our loved ones? Fortunately, I'm joined by a panel of cardiologist experts to help me dissect this very topic, heart to heart. Dr. Shah, I'd like to start with you. According to the Indian Heart Association, over 50% of the cases of heart disease in our country occur amongst a population that's below the age of 50. What do you make of that statistic?
This is to do with genetics, a lot of socioeconomic factors, the lifestyles. In fact, the recent data which was published in Chennai, it says 22% of the heart attack are now occurring below the age of 40, which is very, very surprising and is very alarming. We need to do something about it.
You know, these statistics, as staggering as they are, they're also fairly recent, which leads me to believe that they need to be attributed to lifestyle choices as opposed to genetic predisposition, for example. Your thoughts?
See, the genetics does play a role, because I would like to elaborate on what Dr. Shah said, is that not only in India the disease prevalence is high, but the Indians settled abroad in US or UK, they have a higher incidence of coronary artery disease than the local native population. So we as an Indians suffer from what this is called as a malignant atherosclerosis of Indians. So this is a peculiar to Indians. Having said that, our dietary habits are changing, maybe, and we are perhaps having a more fast life.
Help me understand the facts and figures here. Namely, is heart disease more prevalent in the male versus female population? And how do statistics vary in the urban versus rural demographic?
The heart disease is definitely more prevalent in male than female. And in the initial, maybe a decade or two before, there was a dictum which said that till the females are menstruating, so up to the age of 45, 50, they are protected from heart disease. But now the scenario has almost changed. So definitely, yes, there remains a gap, but both the females and the rural population are catching up with the males and the urban population in this regard.
Mm-hmm. And you know, the heart patient tends to drown in this whole sea of terminology. You hear cardiac arrest, you hear congestive heart failure, you hear coronary artery disease, you know, so on and so forth. The list goes on. Can you just, in layman terms, doctor, explain what's what?
Well, basically, people quite misunderstand what is a heart attack, what is heart failure. They think they are synonymous, but they are really not. If you see, heart attack is blocking off of your blood supply to some portion of your heart, leading to damage or necrosis of one portion of heart muscle, which is called a heart attack. It is often accompanied by chest pain or shortness of breath and features which we associated with ischemia or heart attack. Whereas heart failure is failure of pumping of the heart pumps to a certain efficiency, but if it's not able to pump in requirement to what is required of the body, then it is called heart failure. And this is often manifested by shortness of breath, swelling of feet, congestion of liver, lack of appetite, tiredness, etc., which are slightly different symptoms. So these are the two. And cardiac arrest is again misunderstood as a heart attack. Cardiac arrest is where your heart fails to pump practically at all, which means either it has come to a standstill because of the electrical disturbance and electrical standstill of a heart, or because some impulses which are generated in the upper chamber are not conducted to the lower chamber. Therefore, the pumping chamber comes down to a very, very low rate or stop. Alternative, which is more common, is when it starts fibrillating. There's an electrical short circuit which develops. As a result, the heart, which has been pumping very nicely, suddenly goes into quiver and is able to ineffectively pump anything at all. And that is like a cardiac arrest situation where the brain doesn't get any blood supply, organs do not get any blood supply, and then within minutes the patient falls unconscious.
Well, that's a very helpful breakdown. But that said, obviously none of this is good news. So what level of severity, doctor, calls for what course of action?
Prevention is better than cure. We as a cardiologist have an initiative to impart this knowledge, what could prevent. How do we take measures and when? Heart diseases come as a blend of modifiable factors, non-modifiable factors and genetic factors. We can only modify our modifiable factors. So providing correct initiative, government policies and an environment to follow those reparative measures should be the current scenario.
Say someone has been definitively diagnosed with heart disease. I want to talk about the range of options available to them. So we hear about stents, we hear about blood thinners, we hear about pacemakers, we hear about, in an ultimate scenario, bypass heart surgery. So what is the course of action under what circumstance?
Stents and pacemakers are definitely the most advanced technology, but the most basic technology is ECG, electrocardiogram, which is available in every nook and corner of the city, town, and even the village panchayats. So the basic test to enumerate would be an ECG and echocardiogram. Echocardiogram is something like a sonography of the heart, wherein you can diagnose whether the valves are an issue, whether there are congenital problems, or any of the arteries are having blockages. Then comes the advanced tests of angiography and angioplasty. See, as heart pumps and supplies the whole body, heart itself would require blood for its own functioning, and that is given by three major arteries, and diagnosing blockage in that arteries is known as an angiogram. Initially, angiogram was a big, if someone had to undergo an angiogram, we would have to counsel them for maybe an hour or so, but now it has become a daycare procedure. It's a 10-minute procedure under local anesthesia. The patient walks in and walks out of the cath lab. So the awareness has, initially we discussed about the incidence going up. That is also because the awareness has gone up and diagnostic modalities have now become available, and so more and more people are getting diagnosed. And then comes, if there are blockages, the further two steps, which will be the angioplasty with a stent or a bypass surgery if all the three vessels are blocked. Stent is the most advanced thing that has happened in the last 30 years in cardiology, and after that there are further and further refinements in the stent technology. Nothing over and above a stent has come. Initially there were bare metal stents, then there were drug-eluting stents, generation 1 drug-eluting stent, and even now the third generation drug-eluting stents, and bioabsorbable stents. So basically after stent there is nothing which has come up into the interventional cardiology field. Yes, refinements are continuously on.
I'd like to just barge in once here again, because what you said is quite correct. If you have a chest pain, you get an ECG done. However, it's a serious myth which is believed by people that if your ECG is normal, your heart is normal, and then you forget about till next year, till you have a routine ECG next year.
Sure.
This is not at all correct, because ECG has a poor sensitivity to pick up heart disease if you are not having any symptoms at that point of time. Yes, if you are having a chest pain, you get an ECG done, you will probably find some changes. Yes, if you have rhythm disturbance of the heart, you'll probably find something. Yes, you have had a heart attack, you'll probably find something in ECG. But if you have had a stable angina or ischemic heart disease, which is mild or stable, you may not find anything on the ECG at all. So therefore, you should not confer from a normal ECG that your heart is all good. There are specific other types of tests like stress tests, Stallion scan, system scan, dobutamine stress echocardiogram, CT coronary angiogram even, and sometimes if indicated coronary angiogram, which could really tell you if you have coronary artery disease or not.
And Doctor, thank you for helping us break down those nuances. And I'd like to build on what Dr. Bhalani said, and Dr. Pral, this question is for you. He mentioned a stent. And my understanding of a stent is essentially it's a metal mesh that's inserted inside your coronary artery. But how does it work inside the heart, and what is it designed to achieve ultimately?
Stent came up so as to keep those stents in place, to keep the opened artery open, not to recoil back into a blocked position. So that is the purpose of stents. The stent, now stent being a foreign material which is placed inside the artery, it naturally evokes some reaction, body reaction from the body, and over the time these stents might themselves get narrowed because of the body's reaction, what we call as restenosis. Now the various technologies which have come is to reduce the rate of restenosis of these stents. And what we see, bare metal stents, from bare metal stents came to drug-eluting stents. Bare metal stents had a very high rate of restenosis to the tune of 20 to 30%. Then came first generation drug-eluting stent with the restenosis rate to the tune of 10 to 15%. And now today's drug-eluting stents have a restenosis rate of only 5%. So improvement in stent technology is reducing the restenosis, the reblockage of the stent, or producing a new block in the same region. So that's what stent does.
If the blockage is severe enough, where it's life threatening. Again, there's a spectrum of disease which you were talking, like my colleague said that heart disease or coronary artery disease can present suddenly as an acute heart attack, where the time is muscle. But then other spectrum of disease where you're not presenting with a heart attack, you're getting symptoms of chest pains, you got angina, and then after various tests and all, you come up there's a blockage. Is that blockage significant enough? Then only you would need a stent or a bypass surgery, that too if the patient is symptomatic. If the patient doesn't have symptoms, if the patient is doing fine on medical treatment, the evidence shows, the science shows the stent or a bypass operation doesn't do any good. The medical treatment is as good as enough as your angioplasty or a bypass operation. So that's one, the patient have to be symptomatic and the medicines are not helping. Second, if you think, no, this artery or this blockage is tight enough and the patient is not having symptoms, so what then we do tests which is known as ischemic tests to find out, as my colleague mentioned, that thallium scans and dobutamine stress echoes to prove is that blockage significant enough and compromising with the heart function. If you prove that scientifically, then you can justify doing a stent or doing a bypass operation.
Fascinating, the medical decision making behind all of this.
Yes.
Please, sir.
Just one or two things which I'd like to add here. Here, what I'd like to, for the laypersons, distinguish what is a mild heart attack and what is a severe heart attack. When patient has a severe heart attack, what in our terms we say myocardial infarction. That means part of the heart or heart muscle is threatened to get permanently damaged. While mild heart attack, the part is not going to get permanently damaged, but maybe dysfunctional till the time blood flow is re-established. This is called as angina in our terms. So angina is a mild heart attack when there is stress to the heart, either physical or mental stress. The blood flow to the heart is reduced and patient experiences symptoms. As soon as that stress is over, he becomes normal. As against this, myocardial infarction or severe heart attack, part of the heart is going to get permanently damaged unless the blood flow is re-established. So this is myocardial infarction. This needs immediate intervention. Time is muscle. Here earlier you establish the blood flow, maybe in first 1 hour, which is called as golden hour, then that muscle may be saved to a large extent. Here this is an emergency case. You have to go to the doctor and go to the hospital where you can have immediate measures available for treatment. So that's the distinction.
Those stents are not like our refill stents or plastic stents. They are quite strong stents, and they maintain that artery and they prevent their recoil. Then when those stent is a foreign body. So when that foreign body is inserted into the body tries to repair itself. So you have restenosis. To prevent that restenosis, the newer technology came in wherein drug was coated on that to minimize the repair and to keep the stents flowing. So this is, and then there's a constant technology innovations which Indian companies also are doing well. But there are many other companies which are constantly innovating, trying to get in newer molecules, making the thickness of these stents thinner, yet maintain the tensile strength, the strength to retain and to avoid the collapse of the artery and maintain the patency or a flow of the blood. This is how the spectrum is. Now, angioplasty or bypass does not subvent the medical management and your lifestyle modifications, which has to be an ongoing process. Once I have done an angioplasty or bypass, I cannot ignore myself. Lifestyle and medications are an integral part of my life thereafter.
The intersection of technology and treatment, with medtech now permeating the most marginalized of communities, with there now being devices that can continuously monitor your heart rate, for example. Is innovation keeping pace with the prevalence of this disease?
In fact, there are a lot of technologies which are being in consideration, like telemedicine. Right? For example, there's a company known as AR3 and I'm closely working with them. In fact, angioplasty, I'll come to that later as well. So where the patient, for example, has a heart problem and there's a device which patient can keep with him. It's like a small iPad and they just get attached to that. And I can be in Mumbai, that patient can be in any rural area at a very stretch. Just on my mobile, I'll get what his heart rate is, what his blood pressure is, what his respiratory rate is, what his saturation levels are. So technology is fantastic. Especially people who have pacemakers or people who have heart failures, they are at the risk of developing sudden cardiac death and irregular rhythms. So these can be monitored. We do monitors, for example, patient comes with palpitations or syncope or giddiness. We do tests like 24-hour heart rate monitoring, but that's just for 24 hours. Patient might not have symptoms during that time. What happens when they are not wearing the monitor? So there are technologies available where you can remotely monitor the patient. That's one. Secondly, not available in India. In fact, it is available in Ahmedabad now. Talking about technology, now there's robotic angioplasty, right? Where a robot can do an angioplasty. For example, the patient is over there, I'm over here with a console, as if I'm playing a video game. I can just advance my wire, advance my stent without even being close to the patient. That's one. I might be in another room, and just via cloud, I'm doing an angioplasty. And I see the future, like I can be here, and the patient can be in one of the rural centers, and I might be guiding the junior doctors from here to do angioplasty. So there's no limit to innovations that we can go for. If supported by the government, by the policies, then there's no dearth.
There's no denying the prevalence of heart disease in our country. But how are we approaching the problem from a policy perspective?
The governments have to invest a lot more in prevention strategies, because we have seen in US, where the heart disease were peaking in 60s, cardiovascular diseases, the mortality rates could be reduced by various campaigning programs, anti-smoking, anti-obesity, anti-cholesterol programs, which government had launched. By that, they could reduce the mortality by almost 50% in cardiovascular diseases. So prevention is better than cure. So we should be spending a lot more money in really preventing heart disease and having campaigns like the ones we are doing now, similarly government-aided programs, so that masses, by e-media, by print media, by whatever means, we have to educate them so that they are able to take preventive measures and prevent heart disease. And as we know, heart treatments has become pretty expensive. It is not going to be possible for most of the individuals to bear the cost of heart disease treatment by themselves. So it has to be third-party reimbursement. Third-party reimbursement in form of insurance, third-party insurance in terms of employment benefits, third-party insurance in terms of government schemes, and so on and so forth. So somebody will have to do it as a part of insurance, a group insurance, so that people are able to afford that kind of treatment.
This is slightly political. We cannot blame the government or put the onus completely on the government itself, right? So hospital per se, we as a doctors or we as a professional businessmen, we have to start paying taxes. That is only how we'll be able to help the government or do this preventive measures.
Most of these government schemes are a fixed package oriented. They fix the packages and the treatment is delivered accordingly. Rather than going into fixed package oriented, there should be a minimum standard of treatment protocol that has to be established. That means a particular procedure, minimum things have to be followed. A good guide wire, which is according to the lesion, the balloon according to the lesion, stent according to lesion. Now, if you have a fixed package for the hospitals, private sector hospitals, to fit the expenses into the package, whatever is cheaper is used. So, if you have a minimum standard of treatment protocol established, then maybe a rich person and a poor person will get the same treatment.
Absolutely right. There are corner cuttings and the treatment suffers, the quality of treatment suffers. For example, the hospital has to mint money as well. They have to survive as well. So if you have a fixed package that you have to do this angioplasty, only this is how we'll pay, there would be cost cutting, there would be quality cutting, there would be devices which you would less. To prevent that, what is important, for example, whatever scheme government comes with, whether it works, doesn't work, God says, but you have to have an audit. That is what we lack in India, audit, accountability. Fine, this hospital has done 100 cases of the government system, this has done 10 cases. What are the outcomes, right? Where are the the audit, that accountability is not there. Once you have that accountability, you audit, then you make the changes, you implement the changes, re-audit. That process has to be a continuous process. Just implementing a policy is not going to work.
So that's what, this is the first step towards rising India, rising thing in healthcare. We are starting with this, and the audits will come once this is implemented.
There have been so many schemes, so many things, there has never been an audit.
We need medical professionals who closely monitor, as he said, audit, see what are the expenses involved, and go to the intrinsic problem. Then only you can have a real solution.
But this
because this should be a durable, sustainable.
This is the next part of it, but already government has become proactive, and it has, the objective of government is to health care to the masses. With the current Ayushman Bharat program, try involve maximum hospitals. Try and first educate the primary health centers to read an ECG, right? And then that ECG, I mean, these are basic aspects. trying to rope in as many hospitals to provide health care to the common man. What heart care treatment, angioplasty was only for rich and famous, now it is available to the common man. But eventually everything will ensure.
Yeah. Just one bottom line, that any insurance policy, any long-term scheme works with a proper economic funding. Okay, we have allocated a one-time fund. Is it going to last? Is it going to cover everyone? That is what we have to answer. Where is that going to funding come from long-term is what we have to know. So one has to have a real practical solution to this, not a one-time allotment of for a policy, and then what happens 5 years later, we do not know. Where's the money coming from? Any success will depend on where the money is coming from. So unless you have a set source of income coming into the insurance schemes of whatever sort, by government or private or wherever, it is not going to succeed in long term. We wish it succeeds because that is the way ahead.
Right.
But I think we have to formulate a different method or something of funding these schemes, which is self-independent sort of,
Sure.
not dependent on someone else.
So it seems like we have a huge range of opinions from our panel of cardiologists here, but the common thread seems to be an underlying optimism around the integration of technology, treatment, and policy implementation when it comes to heart disease. And with that, thank you for joining us on Heart to Heart.
Partnered by Times Influence.